It's good to get a chance to get together and talk a bit about the coaching side of SAMS. During the next hour, we're going to spend some time looking at a variety of things. We're going to have a number of people who join us as we go because they're still logging in. I'm getting that little notices on the computer right now. We are recording the session, and we'll make it available to people afterwards. So again, I appreciate everyone who has joined us today for this training session. First thing we're going to do is I'll just take you through a brief overview. Instead of 325, we're at 365 schools. We're in 61, actually 63 districts now. We're in 14 states. There they are. The ones that are in bolder print, Delaware, Georgia, Illinois, Iowa, Kentucky, and Missouri have statewide SAM projects in place, and so are able to support and implement SAMs themselves. Iowa had some great news this couple of weeks ago. The governor there has decided that there should be a SAM in every school. So school administrators of Iowa, if the legislature agrees, will be implementing SAM statewide. So that's really exciting. 3 race to the top states. New independent evaluation proves that it works really well, and we'll share that with you in just a second. National Program Board is in place. Fee-for-service structure, and things are pretty good. In terms of the overview that I promised for the Phoenix conference, Mike Rutherford is going to be one of our main speakers. Mike is with the Rutherford Learning Group in North Carolina. Terrific guy. Those of you who have heard Mike speak before know that he's one of the best adult professional developers you'll find anywhere. Really a good guy. Looks like we're getting a little bit of feedback, so if anyone who is online is on a speakerphone, please pick up your phone so we don't get the feedback. That'd be nice. Mike is going to focus his work on feedback and different kinds of feedback techniques that are effective. Another keynote speaker is Todd Whitaker. Todd is from Indiana State University. He's written the book, What Good Principals Do, and he is a very entertaining speaker and one that I think that people will definitely enjoy and also get a lot out of. His book has just been redone, a second edition, and so we will be using that at the conference. Todd is a very entertaining speaker, to say the least. I think people will enjoy him. Cynthia Uline and Lynn Perez from the University of San Diego will be presenting. They've done a interesting research piece, qualitative research, on the way exceptional principals observe instruction, and they call it expert noticing. And so they're going to be sharing what their results from their research has shown, and their design was just fascinating in terms of how they came up with this. Our good friend Kim Marshall, who writes the Marshall Memo, suggested Cynthia and Lynn for our conference, and so I'm really pleased that they're going to be with us. Vasily Bogan, and I've listed him twice. He should just be on here once, but maybe I've listed him twice because I am so excited about this guy. He is a principal in Moscow, Russia, in the Russian Republic. He formed a school right after the revolution that changed the Soviet Union to the Russian Republic. His approach to his approach as a principal to developing teachers is absolutely fascinating. They videotape a teacher every day. They do a session with not just that teacher, but other teachers to talk about the effective practice and what else you could do to be more effective. He also uses these same tapes with students to have students begin looking at themselves as a student, as a learner. Fascinating fellow. He was featured in the New York Times 4 weeks ago now, and he's going to be at our conference. We're pretty pleased. And then there's this guy named Nathan Roberts. Now, Nathan is on the line right now. Nathan, tell him what you're going to be doing.
Working hopefully mostly with the SAMs on what we call time thieves, different ways that the time keeps being taken away from administrators at schools, and hopefully help them alleviate it with a lot of legal twist to it.
He has 4 different sectionals he's going to be doing. As you know, Nathan, as head of the Ed Leadership Program at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, before he came to the light side, he was on the dark side. He used to be an attorney. And so he's going to be doing a variety of sectionals so we can provide some content that's specific to SAMs. And so that's content that we are certain of for the conference. Any questions or comments before we move on? All righty. Continuing on, and I see we've got a lot of other people on the line. Looks like Debbie Daniels has joined us. Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
Looks like Barb Lesticow. Are you there, Barbara?
Hi there.
Yes. Hi. And Dave Seckler in Delaware.
Yep, I'm here. Having some sound issues, so if I cut off, that'll be the reason. But
yeah, isn't it amazing? Tech is something else. Sherry Hoffman, are you there?
Yes.
Hi, Sherry. I'm glad you could join us today. So we have, I see 12 people so far online, and so we'll go ahead and continue with the 3 news items before we move into the coaching piece of our training today. The Policy Study Associates, the newest research is out. As many of you remember, Wallace selected PSA in 2008 to study and evaluate SAM work. PSA produced its initial evaluation in 2009, and they just updated this with a larger group of participating SAM schools, and here are the overall findings. We know that the SAM process does what it's designed to do, increase principal time spent on instructional leadership. We know that the increase in time is significant, adding the equivalent to more than 1 day per week in instructional time for the average principal. The increase in instructional time occurs at all levels, elementary, middle, and high, and the process works equally well at Model 1 and Model 3 schools. So we were really pleased about that because that's definitely what we thought was true, but with the original study did not go to that depth. We also know that the longer the principal participates, the greater the instructional time increase is. In the first year, an average SAM principal gains 5 hours and 57 more minutes every week. That's the equivalent of 27 extra days a year. So when you think about that, one of the things that we say to a principal is, you're really gaining 27 days a year of instructional time. What is it you're doing with that? What is it that's going to change teacher practice? Second-year SAM teams, we find that the average gain is 8 hours and 30 more minutes every week. That's the equivalent of 38 extra days a year. And amazingly enough, in the third year, the average is 12 hours and 20 more minutes every week, the equivalent of 55 extra days a year. So this is awfully good news. It's good because we can show that a SAM principal team who does this, the longer they do it, the better they get at it. And they're creating essentially 55 more days a year. So when you think of how much time that is, when a principal is working maybe 180 days in a classroom or in a school, to look at the equivalent of 55 extra days have been added for instructional leadership, that is pretty amazing. Comments or questions before we move on? You are a very quiet group today. Dave Seckler, you're never this quiet.
I'm just listening and enjoying.
All righty, all righty. Anyhow, pretty cool stuff that we've learned in terms of the SAM project from PSA. Also news, NSIP, National SAM Innovation Project, will become an independent nonprofit on July 1st of 2012. Program board is in place. The incorporation actually took place today, and so we're incorporated effective today. The actual paperwork will be filed for nonprofit status with the IRS in November, and we'll receive our certification, unless there's some problem, which we don't expect, on February 1st. So that's all good. So let's move into coaching unless anybody has anything else for the good of the order. All righty. SAM, complex change process, guys, is a simple idea. We always say that, not just because Jody, who was our original, through Wallace, was so involved in the SAM work, not just because she said it, because it gets to the point that this really isn't just about increasing the amount of time you spend, but asking yourself, is it making a difference in terms of teacher practice? And so getting the change of practice really is twofold. It's getting the principal to change how he or she uses their time. But the second piece is to be able to make that connection with change of teacher practice. And so this graphic is really important, I think, because it gets to just that change of principal time is aimed at improving teacher practice. And as a coach, you want to be kind of making that the statement that the SAM team doesn't forget, that the purpose here is not simply to increase your time, but to make sure that what you do is improving teacher practice and you can make that connection. We're going to talk a little bit about how to do that today, and we're going to look at some time tracking calendars to look at that very issue. Obviously stopping to remember that SAM is a process, and that by the time you're doing your coaching, the team should have already done their readiness work, and maybe even looking at doing some of that readiness work again from time to time, that they would have their baseline data collection, and you have access in your time track calendar to that, that they're doing their daily time track meetings, and the research shows that a team that does that always wins. If they're having their meeting, they end up increasing their time. And then you as a coach go in and begin working with the team, and that way by the time they've passed a year, they've had success, not just in increasing the time they're spending instructionally, but being able to make that connection with change of teacher practice. And so if you look at Time Track Web as a way of increasing the time, that's good. But if you stop there, that's probably bad, because if you only look at, am I increasing the time I'm spending instructionally, and don't get to the last bullet, the impact on teacher practice, then we're kind of missing the boat. What's the point? The issue isn't to increase time as an end result, but instead for a purpose, and in this case, improving teacher practice, or having an impact on student and parent engagement. So as a coach with Time Track, the first thing that I always look at is I want to know has the day that I'm looking at, is it scheduled at or above goal? If the team isn't doing the scheduling in advance, then really you can't go any further. And so it's sort of like you have to be able to crawl before you walk. You have to be able to walk before you run. Getting the team to do this first part is pretty critical. And I know a lot of you now look in on your Time Track calendars before you do your coaching visit. So I want to stop for a minute, and let's start with Debbie Daniels. How effective is that for you before you make your coaching visit, getting a chance to look at the Time Track calendar and see how your team is doing on this first issue? Have they scheduled at or above goal?
It really makes a great difference, and I've just had some challenges with some of my new schools this week, last week, and had to follow up again this morning with them that they're, just what you said, Mark, is so important that it's done before, as a plan. I tell them it's a planning tool and a scheduling tool to try to see that they schedule at goal, and it's not just something that you, after the fact, report what you did. And that's part of the challenge that I'm having right now, is getting them to think ahead and to look at it as a way to be able to schedule and meet goals.
Anyone else have a comment about that? Barbara, maybe?
Well, I just lost you on my, my screen is gone. I don't know what happened. I didn't touch it either.
Well, we're switching to a new view. We're going to look at one of the Time Track calendars, because I thought maybe since Debbie made a really good point with a new team, and it's true for an old team too, you really have, or a veteran team, you really have to be able to get them to crawl before they can walk, and getting them to actually schedule in advance makes sense. What's been your experience with that, Barbara?
Well, my experience is very limited because we've been struggling with technology in Illinois at my locations, and I have 6 new people that are joining. So I really haven't. We've struggled. We've tried to look at it, what they provided with their Outlook calendars, and I look at that ahead of time and make comments and ask some questions. So it's very helpful to me, but it is very limited what I've been able to do so far. But we hope in November that everything is going to be up and going now.
Good. When you say technology is giving you difficulty, I'm kind of puzzled as to why.
Well, for example, in Freeport, where I have most of my locations, most of my schools, their department just wasn't syncing in with the calendars with this program.
And they've been working with Jim. They've been in contact with Jim over all of this.
The reason I brought this up because I think it's a good starting point. The Freeport is a good example. The schools there wanted to use the auto-sync with Time Track, and what we encourage people to do is to use just Time Track to start with, and then use auto-sync after you've actually shown some success with your Time Track. Auto-sync is pretty complicated, and it's a device that actually connects your Time Track calendar with your Outlook. And my experience has been is that you really want the team to get in the habit of just scheduling at or above goal. And there's no conflict at all with using TimeTrack and Freeport for using the regular calendar. Their issue has been getting it to work with AutoSync. And so what I'd suggest to you is make sure you just get them to use TimeTrack and don't even introduce AutoSync until they've done it for several weeks and been successful. Because otherwise they do have a really good excuse not to do the work.
Well, they do think that I'm checking in on them all the time, and they even think you are. So
I try. I try.
So I think we do have those conversations, and they give me reasons about why things work or don't work. So.
Yeah. Well, push them hard to just do the regular TimeTrack and then auto-sync later. Because that way they'll actually get in the habit of being successful. We're looking at one of Debbie's schools. Debbie, this SAM principal did okay for Thursday, October 20th, and for Friday they didn't quite make goal. And then if we go to today, I assume you're all seeing on your screen now their schedule for today.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You can see that what they've done is they have not scheduled their instructional work ahead of time. And so, Bert Hendy, let me put you on the spot. Bert, you're going to be the coach, and Nathan, this is your calendar you're looking at. And Bert is on the phone with you right now, and she has a question for you. So, Coach Bert, talk to Sam Nathan.
Nathan, I see that nothing has been pre-calendared for this week, and I'd just like to talk about that for a little bit.
I understand we're behind on this. We're going to have our meeting. This morning got canceled because of a fight in the gym, but we're set up this afternoon, and we have a new plan to schedule ahead for all the things we know are going to get set, like our faculty meetings and our assessment meetings. So we're going to try and catch up, but our goal is to meet every morning to try to make sure we get it done for the entire day so we don't leave without it being green.
And last time that we met, we talked about perhaps taking one day a week when you spend a little more time together so that you can pre-calendar out for the coming week. And we also talked about trying to make sure that you are pre-calendaring at least at what your goal is. Beyond the things that you know are coming up, what are your thoughts around making sure that you have at least your goal calendared out?
We're trying to work on that. It's just been so hectic with us here. We just haven't had time to look at that yet. But I promise we're going to get to that tomorrow.
You're also going to talk about all those things that are interrupting all of your time, so that perhaps you and your SAM together can be looking at all of the various resources in your building, because perhaps there are some things that you're still spending time on that you don't really need to be spending time on. Have you talked about that at all with your SAM?
We have a little bit, and I think what our next plan is to set out some goals for the year and try and figure out how we're going to know using the time track if we're meeting any of those goals. And we think that's going to help us try to start scheduling things that are going to address our yearly goals.
Okay. So when I come to see you in a couple of weeks, I will be able to look in at your calendar again and see that you have actually been able to have those meetings and set out what your goals and your focus is going to be.
Yes, we're planning to do that on Fridays. Even though Friday's hectic, we're going to do that in the mornings to see how our week went and make sure that we're set up for the future week with all these goals that we're setting.
That sounds like a real plan.
Well, I seek applause for Bert Hendy. Very nice. And Nathan, that's great too. Anyone have any other suggestions they would make to Bert as a coach, working with Nathan as a principal or a SAM who has not scheduled at or above goal for the day? Well, one suggestion I would make would be, I think I would say to Nathan at the end of the conversation, and Bert probably would too if we would have played this role play out a little bit longer, I might say, so Nathan, what am I going to see when I look at the calendar again tonight? What am I going to see for tomorrow? because you want to make sure that the principal and the SAM get in the habit of not leaving the school on Monday until Tuesday is scheduled at or above goal. Make sense, everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. All righty. All righty. Let's take a look at this person's dashboard. Granted, they have not been doing this long. We know that their October scheduled time so far is at 21%, so they haven't reached goal. But let's look at the areas where they are scheduling time. If you look at the center graph, and let's see if I can use a drawing tool to highlight this. There we go. If I look at this graph right here, I'm so artistic, don't you think, you guys?
Very talented.
What you're seeing is this principal's 5 top descriptors in terms of instructional time spent. And so there's walkthrough, office work prep, decision-making groups and committees, celebration, and feedback. Now, remember, these are all instructional time spent, and so that'd be instructional celebration, instructional feedback, instructional walkthrough. So let me ask, and let's pick on Barbara. Barbara, what do you think? With these 5 descriptors being this person's top 5, do you think he is thinking about, or in this case Sharon Smith, is really thinking about their impact on teacher practice?
Well, I'm concerned about the feedback time a little bit. I think that percentage should be higher.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my screen again. Oh, okay, got it back. So I probably would talk about that because I know with the people that I work with, they're struggling with the quality of feedback that I think that they're getting or giving to their teachers to change the practices. I am not hearing that or feeling that the change is coming as much as I think maybe it could.
Okay, so let's pretend that Dave Seckler is the principal and you be the coach here. Talk with him about the amount of feedback that he has scheduled.
Dave, and let's take a look at the feedback. I see you're spending a lot of time. What is the first one? Are those the walkthroughs? You're doing a lot of walkthroughs. Yes, and that's great. But I was wondering about the feedback. When are you having time to talk to these teachers? What kind of feedback are you giving them?
Well, it's tough even to schedule time to talk. Mostly, I've been trying to do the walkthroughs and get a note out, just what I saw, how things went, that sort of thing. It really doesn't take a lot of time, but it's something new I'm starting, and unfortunately, that's about all I've been able to do here recently.
When you say it's something new that you're going to be starting, but tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, we used to do the walkthroughs and then talk among the administrative staff or, do the district checklist. It really didn't give the teachers a whole lot of feedback. So I'm trying now at least to let the teachers have some idea of what I saw and what I thought of it.
What kind of feedback do you think works best with your teachers? You say when you do your walkthroughs, you give them written feedback of some kind?
Yeah, just a note. It's one of those things I read in a book, but I really wish there was more face-to-face because that seems to be where things really start to happen.
Do you think you can start scheduling some time to have the face-to-face?
Even for walkthroughs? I thought that was only for observations.
Oh, well, do you think there might be more opportunities that you can talk to the teachers?
Yeah, probably, sure.
Do you think you're seeing some of the changes that you're expecting in these classrooms?
Just beginning to. We got through the beginning of school, and people were all worked up and they're all busy with organization. I think they're just starting to take to heart some of the in-service stuff that we did at the beginning of the year.
Do you have any conversations at your faculty meetings about these things, about your walkthroughs and expectations?
No, we haven't really yet. Would that count as feedback?
I don't know that it'd be counting as feedback, but it would be an indirect feedback about what your expectations, what you hope for.
Right.
At the school.
Yeah, I could do that.
Applause for Barbara. Very nicely done. Very nicely done. Marcia, do you have any things that you would add in terms of wanting to work with Nathan here, or with Dave here? Marcia, did I lose you? Marcia Lay? I think I might have. Sherry, anything you would add here?
Being the new kid on the block, one of the things that I would suspect would really help is even when a principal schedules a walkthrough, that they deliberately schedule time for feedback at the same time.
I think that's just an excellent point. One of the things that we do in training now with new SAM principal teams is we really hit hard that notion that if you're scheduling a walkthrough, there just has to be feedback that shows up later. And so you can see this SAM principal team, she did have walkthrough on Thursday and then a feedback session scheduled on the following Friday, so the next day. And that's good, but you want to get them into the habit of doing that. The other thing you want to do is make sure that they look at scheduling a variety of feedback. And so when the SAM asked the principal, so you did your walkthrough today, who did you see that you want to give feedback to? Well, if we open up that walkthrough from Thursday, we can see that this particular principal visited the kindergarten team, okay? And you can tell that because those names are checked. And that's a great thing to be able to look at when you are looking at the calendar ahead of time. And so if she did this right, then the feedback session, yep, it's with those same people. It's with the kindergarten team. And so one of the things that the SAM really should say when they have their daily meeting on Monday after this feedback session is, did any of those teachers that you gave feedback to, in this case non-directive feedback, do any of them need a private meeting with you for employee supervision? Is there anything you need to be more directive about? Because you want the principal to begin thinking about the times they need to give feedback where there's a directive planned versus feedback where there's just conversation. Another connection is, how are your feedback sessions, whether they be non-directive feedback or directive employee supervision, how are they tying in with the professional development that you did? And during the role play we just heard, we heard the coach bring it up. Well, could you bring this up in the staff meeting? You want to make those connections for the SAM principal team. Other comments before we move on?
Mark, just one thing. Of course, last week was the first week these schools started to use to use the calendar. But one of the things that I have done is given them some deadlines to send me just an email saying that in their daily meeting they had looked at their baseline data reports and had identified a target in both instruction that they wanted to increase time on, and one in management where they were going to target to decrease the time. And two things. One was that it helped me to know that they've actually met and had some conversation, and then the second one was to then be able to talk with them about why did you choose that one, what have you thought about any of the ways, the strategies you're going to try to use to either increase or decrease. And that helped me to kind of get started with them as they started to develop their calendars.
Boy, excellent suggestion. Good idea to use. Anyone else before we move on? Nathan, I have on the screen right now Ty Burdett's calendar. I know you're working with this principal. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about this principal's progress?
Yeah, they started off with high goals and high ideals because he felt like he was in the schools, in the classrooms a lot. This is the one we're working with a team of the SAM. It's a librarian and a secretary that appears to be working very well. I noticed on there, too, he's going to have to follow up a little more of this feedback with them, but he's got him some block schedules that just moved on the screen on me, but I know he's got scheduled set times that he meets with his sections. It's a high school. So he meets with his science group and his math group and his new teacher group and then his English groups, and he's been going through a lot of curriculum with them. So that's what a lot of those block meetings are.
Really an interesting principle. You can see that his September and October, he has exceeded his goal. And you can see his top 5 are walkthrough, planning, curriculum, and assessment. And as Nathan was saying, he does a lot of meetings with folks, and he gives his feedback in a meeting setting, not to individuals, but to the group. For example, he might go into the group and say, you know, through my walkthroughs in the science department this week, I've noticed a lot of you are doing a lot of things that connect with other content from other departments. Talk to me about that. And it's a very good technique to get the principal to leverage his feedback to have an impact not just on the person he's talking to who's doing it, but to other people in the department. The research from Toronto and the University of Minnesota show that that kind of feedback in a group setting, if done skillfully, where people are not embarrassed, can be highly effective. You can see quite a bit of feedback, almost 5%, and I think that's probably the result of the fact that this principal is making a point to always schedule at or above goal. So, Sherry, you said you're the new person on the block, so let's pretend this is your school, and you're looking in on Sunday night, and you're looking at Monday. Are you happy or not? Sherry, are you there?
Yes, I'm looking because I can't see. I think Monday looks strong.
Mm-hmm. In fact, we'd really be happy with this principal because his goal is 42%, and he is actually scheduled 52%, and you can see that there are a variety of things that he has scheduled that you would think would have a positive impact on instructional leadership. One of the next things I would do as a SAM coach is I'd open up some of the events to see if, in fact, he is scheduling who he's doing it with. And sure enough, you can see that when I open this event, he is scheduled to be with Mr. Ketchings. And so that tells me a lot that he's actually thinking through what he wants to do. I'd look up maybe this block meeting tomorrow, and I can see that he has clicked a number of people he's doing that with, and he's done it as a group. This apply group at the bottom allows him, and you can see he set up the 4 blocks: English teachers, freshman teachers, and math teachers. By clicking apply group, he tells TimeTrack how to keep current who he's actually been meeting with. And so I'd be very pleased with this principal because he's at or above goal. Bert, should I be unhappy that Tuesday's not at or above goal yet?
I don't know that I would be unhappy, but I would certainly be asking, you know, why. I mean, is it that they're meeting at the end of the day on Monday, and they're just able to really do that pre-scheduling, you know, one day ahead of time, you know, at this point? So I would definitely want to know what's happening actually in their daily meetings.
Be a good question, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Dave, what do you think? Would you be unhappy with Tuesday right now?
Concerned maybe, not necessarily unhappy, but what I see is that for the days after today, they've scheduled basically regular events. They've scheduled the walkthroughs and the block meetings, but I don't see any unique events. I don't see any observations. I don't see anything that apparently isn't a regular, if not weekly, you know, every other day sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I'd be asking my coachee, you know, aren't there other one-off kinds of events that you could schedule that, and try to point out it doesn't have to be just the regular events. I mean, it's pretty impressive that he's from 20 to 28% just with those regular events, and that's good. But I think there's more there that I'm guessing he's got other events on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that he already knows about that could be put on the calendar.
It may be. What do you think, Nathan?
I'm guessing they're gonna meet afterwards to start filling in their some of the feedback that hasn't been scheduled yet because they didn't know when he's going to be able to get to it.
Yeah,
they're pretty good about going through what happened the day before and then making sure he knows what's set up for the day.
This is a calendar I've looked in on pretty frequently because I keep wanting, I don't want to say catch them, but I keep wanting to see that they're not at or above goal for the day they're on, and they are always at or above goal. But the rest of the calendar is much sparser, so I think that's interesting. The thing I'm probably most impressed when I go to the individual dashboard, I can see specifically that he is making significant time investments with teachers in his building. And so one of the questions I'd probably have for him at this point is, talk to me about Doucette. What's happening with this teacher? What are you attempting to accomplish? Is the time you're spending with him or her, is it getting you where you want to go? And I'd probably do that with each of these 5 teachers. Tell me, and I'll open this up to anyone, how has this particular dashboard been useful or maybe perhaps not useful in your coaching sessions?
I do find it useful, this is Bert, because I think it really makes them step back and really look at, are they putting their time where they believe they need to be putting their time. And sometimes they'll find that they're really spending more time with a particular teacher than they thought, or that they really need to be, and that it helps them to shift a little bit in how they're scheduling their time.
Other comments, people who have used this particular dashboard?
Mark, this is Debbie. I think it's one of the best things that we've done with the time track, because this is where it really makes a difference, is for principals to just what Bert was saying, to see who they're spending their time with and how they're spending it. And as far as talking with superintendents and district office folks to try to encourage them to support bringing their schools into the program, this has been one of the things that seems to be making a real big impression on them.
All righty. Other comments? Okay, one of the things that I do when I do a look-in, and that's what I call it when I open up a calendar and just take a look, is I always look first, is this person at or above goal for the day? Second thing I always do is I open up an event to see if they're actually attaching a person or group to every event, because I think that's pretty important. The second thing I do is I look at that individual impact dashboard. And again, for anyone who hasn't been doing this yet, that is over here on this side of the calendar. You'll see that there are dashboards. One's a progress dashboard, one's an individual impact dashboard. By clicking individual impact, what I can do is I can quickly tell if this particular principal is tracking their time on a regular basis with individuals, and then I can begin asking some questions, because when you see the breakout of time with each of those teachers, you can then ask some very valuable questions. The next thing I always do is I click the group impact dashboard, and that group impact is going to tell me if this particular principal is tracking their time with individual groups, or if instead they're just doing individuals. And if I can get the tech to wake up here for me. See if we can, I think I confused it by writing on the calendar. One of the things that we're doing with TimeTrack that we're pretty excited about is we're moving all the TimeTrack calendars to a faster server. And so although TimeTrack now is faster than it used to be, it still isn't as fast as we'd like it to be. And so I'm going to close out here because it's locked up for me. And I'm going to open it up. Anyhow, we'll be migrating to the new server. I used one of Jim's words, migrating. We're going to be moving to the new server in the next couple of weeks, and we will let people know ahead of time. But they will notice a significant change in terms of how fast the calendars are. And so we think that will be helpful. So let's go ahead and open up one more calendar. Anybody have one they'd like to see? No one has one they want to talk about or that they've seen?
You go to Danville, Illinois, check in on Mark. I think their calendar is working now.
Okay, go to Illinois.
Danville High.
It looks like my computer is being slow on me. And it looks like my computer is locking up. I hate that when
It's
that
not
happens.
clicking on Illinois. I tried. Not clicking.
Okay, it looks like it's the server. All right, we'll try to go back to that in just a minute. Anyhow, making sure that your team is scheduled at or above goal and that your team is tracking time with individuals and groups is obviously pretty important, and it's a way of making sure that your team is taking it seriously. So those are 4 things that I make a point of doing. You just mentioned Danville, Illinois, and this was his initial baseline. And my question to you, would you be happy as a coach if this principal wanted to set a goal after 1 year of being at 40%? So he's currently at 23%. Would you be happy with this team if they wanted to be at 40% after 1 year? And I'll open that up to anybody.
Yeah, I think that would be an okay goal.
All righty. What do you think, Raleigh?
I'm still trying to get there. My computer is frozen on me.
Yeah, mine did too.
I can't pull that up.
That's okay. This team, Raleigh, is at 23% instruction. That's their baseline. Would you be happy if they said they wanted to be at 40% after 1 year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did they start at the beginning of the school year?
Sure.
In September. Okay. Yes.
All right. Sounds good. What's the parameter here, guys? What are we looking for after 1 year? What kind of gain?
You mean in percentages, or?
Mm-hmm. In terms of a basic percentage gain on instructional leadership time, what are we looking for as success? What are we saying? Hey, you should be going up at least this amount in the year.
I would think
12 to 13%.
Yeah, 13.
About 13%, and that comes from the original PSA report. Interestingly enough, they tell us now that we might want to consider upping that because most everybody's way above it. And I'm saying, I like 13%. That's a huge change in 1 year. Yeah, that's the litmus test we use. You want to see at least a 13% increase in the first year. You want to be over 50% eventually, but not necessarily in the first year. You want people to be successful, and you want to be able to build on success, and you don't want to put a person in a position where they can't be successful. So again, we use this graphic all the time, pushing the principal not just to increase their time, but begin thinking about, does it have the impact on teacher practice that you'd like? I want to move into something that I know all of you spend time on, and I wanted to hear your thoughts about it. Getting the team to begin looking at who the first responders are in their school is important. And I wanted to know, and we'll start with Dave Seckler, what your success has been as a coach in getting the team to actually identify first responders for management issues.
It's early yet with some of our schools because we have all the new Race to the Top schools, but we have used the completed sample first responder sheet that is up on SAMS Connect, and a blank version of that in all of our SAMS training. So yeah, that's it. So we haven't really tried to convince them to do that. We've just said this is part of the bargain, and in our training, we pass this out, we explain the concept, and then we give time for them to work together on this. And especially where we have multiple schools in a district, we pair them up and give them some individual time first, and then let them compare notes and try to figure out other areas that would be likely to have first responders. So, I would say that's really, it's been an excellent tool. One of the best things, actually, since we have so many Model 3 SAMs, is this kind of helps put a visual to the fact that the new SAM, who was the main office secretary, is not to be the first responder in everything. to help make the point that when we talk about delegating stuff and taking it off of the principal's plate, that doesn't mean that it all goes to the SAM.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this has been a really good tool, and actually it helps explain a lot of the concepts that we have in the project, and it's been a nice kind of tension reducer too, or stress reducer for SAMs in training.
Other comments?
I think Dave's right. One of the things, I had a lot of folks very resistant to the Model 3s that have been identified as SAMs until we actually talked about this and are using this tool with them. And I had an online meeting with my 10 new schools, and we brainstormed. We used this example, and then we brainstormed a list of, were there other management activities they could think of. So we actually developed an Excel spreadsheet with the different categories on it. And I think that really helped them because once they realized that they didn't have to do everything themselves, it wasn't just delegating the management from the principal to them, but it was also what could be delegated to others in the school. And that really wasn't something they had thought a whole lot about until we started looking at this. Now, one of the things that some of our schools started with, which I think is maybe a good place to start, is one of the districts I work with is completely in turnaround and under a lot of timelines and deadlines with the State Department to do things for turnaround. But one of the things they had to do was develop organizational charts. And so when we started talking about the first responder list and looking at two things, not only just the responder list, but also in terms of succession planning, if that person moves on or takes another job or something happens, is there somebody in place that can step in? So that was one of the things that kind of helped to motivate them to look at the responder chart a little bit closer and use their organizational chart. And from that, they've actually made several changes in the organizational chart.
Well, that's fascinating. Other comments?
If I could just add one other thing, too. One other nice aspect of this chart, especially the sample, is, we introduced the concept of first responders, but when they see second or third, it really brings home the fact that it doesn't always have to be one person. Some of the schools we deal with are small enough that the staff's just not big enough to have any realistic third responder, but most everybody can come up with a first and then even a second for most of the categories, and I think that also helps reduce the stress, that it doesn't all just go to one person, even for a given activity.
Really a good point. It's kind of funny, Dave. I was working with one school, and it was a Model 3 school in St. Louis, and the Sam said to me, well, there isn't anybody to be a second responder. I said, okay, so what happens if you're not there? And he said, oh, well, Mrs. Stevens would do it. And then he laughed, and he goes, oh, I get it. He goes, what you're saying is, if I really couldn't, who would? I said, yeah. I said, and they looked at me and he said, well, that would then require that I talk to Mrs. Stevens about being a second responder, wouldn't it? I said, yes, it would, because you'd be saying you are asking her if she is willing. And he actually began practicing with me how he was going to talk with her, because he wasn't sure she was going to like this idea of her name being on the form. But she's always been the one that's picked up things when he's been sick or gone. Other comments before we move on?
Mark, with the first responders, what I found, you mentioned earlier, the longer the principal is part of the SAM program, they improve as far as their instructional leadership. And I found that new SAM participants, they talk about first and second responders, but in actuality, they're not doing that. But I did find in one of my schools, and he spoke at our last conference, he's been in the program, I think, going into his third or fourth year. They really have that down very, very well. There's no exception. I mean, they know who the first, second, and third responders. So I think what I'm saying, the longer they're in the program, have the opportunity to put this together and really seriously think about who would respond if I'm not here, not just on paper, what would happen in actuality.
It's a really good question. Other comments or questions? All righty. I want to go back to time track again. We'll see if my computer is thawed out, because it seemed to be having trouble moving. That's one of the reasons we're moving the all the calendars off of the Louisville School District servers. Oh, there we're moving. We're going to look at Danville, weren't we? Danville High School, Mark.
Uh-huh.
Okay, here we go. Let's see if it will come up for us. One of the reasons, okay. So this principal is using AutoSync, and the red you see are items that have been synced in, but in order for TimeTrack to count them as an instructional item, it has to know what it is. And so that means that it has to be opened. So we'll open it up. And you can see TimeTrack, when it auto-synced an Outlook event in, automatically lists it as personal. And the principal or the SAM has to open it up, give it a category, give it a descriptor, and then click Update. Once they do that, then it will process the data and change it to what you told it is, in this case instruction, and so his percentage went up to 7.5 for today. So this is an example, too, of a principal who's using AutoSync but not doing really the TimeTrack work yet. But let's go to a prior week and see what it looks like. So we'll go to last week.
Mark, I think that this is one of the best ways to talk with the principal and the SAM about going to the website and filling in the calendar from there. And when they do sync it in that from the Sam's Connect website to their calendar, because in that case the colors are there and they don't have to go back and repeat that or to make the changes.
I agree.
So that's one thing I worked on this week a lot with mine, is getting them all to go directly to the website. That's where they do all their work. They've even downloaded it now to their iPad so that if they're out at a meeting, they can still go to that one to be able to put everything in.
I think it's a very good suggestion and idea to do it just the way you're saying, Debbie, because you have to get the person in the habit of actually scheduling their work ahead of time. And I think AutoSync is really cool, but I also see it being used by people as a reason not to do the real work, which is to schedule at or above goal. And so this person's AutoSync is working, and I can tell that because I see all these red events. I can also see by going to Settings and looking at when it was last synced, that it last synced on the 29th of September, and so it is not currently working. So these red events have been here all the time. So his AutoSync isn't on even, because if it were, it would be syncing. It would have said October 24th, because it does it every 15 minutes. So for this principal, it looks like they've turned off their AutoSync, but they haven't turned on their scheduling at or above goal each day. This is a very good principle, but this is definitely a time to have a conversation with the principal and the SAM about going back to basics, making sure you schedule at or above goal each day. We have spent almost an hour, in fact we're 1 minute short of an hour, talking about some of the things we can do as coaches. I have to tell you, I think your teams are awfully lucky to have you, because during the role plays we heard just exceptionally good coaching. And I certainly appreciate that, and I know the SAMs and principals do. The session we just did today will be shared with the other SAM coaches so they can listen in or view it online, and we'll send out that link a little bit later today. I want to thank everyone for participating today. Any closing comments before we sign off?
I have a suggestion.
This is Sherry.
Oh, okay.
Go right ahead, Sherry.
Do we have access to your PowerPoints after the fact?
You do. In fact, I'll go ahead and send the PowerPoint along with the link.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Mark, are the past trainings archived somewhere on the website so we can access all of them, or do we just access by individual links that you send us?
It's a good question, Marcia. Up to now, they've been just the individual links we send you. As we move to this new server, and I didn't explain that very well earlier, currently all TimeTrack calendars are physically on a server in Louisville, Kentucky. And to get access, if you're in Illinois, you're going from point to point to point to point, finally to Louisville. And the Louisville server is limited in terms of its speed. And so we're moving to a commercial server that uses a mirror system. It's called iMotion is the name of the company. And they have a server farm on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. And so your access will be more than 5 times faster. And we've tested it, and it's just amazing. When you update an event and you make it a repeating event for the full year, it takes 4 seconds to load it for the calendar. And for those of you who've done that before with on the current system, that can take upwards of a minute if you're doing a repeating event for an entire year. So 4 seconds from a minute. So it's going to be much, much faster. It also gives the user, they don't know what's happening, but when they go to their calendar, it will go to the server farm that is the fastest. So it's whoever's up and running fastest at that moment, that's where your link goes, and then it mirrors back and forth so it keeps a clean copy. I tell you all that because our website's moving to those servers as well, and when it does, we'll be archiving all of the training sessions we do, not just for time change coaches, but earlier in the week we did a training session, for example, for data collection folks. We had 24 people participate, and since then we've had 18 others go in and view. But we'll put all of that online so it's accessible. Anyone else before we finish today? All righty. I want to thank everyone for participating. I really appreciate it. And again, this will be available to you a little bit later this afternoon, and we'll send out the link. And we'll also attach the PowerPoint. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.